Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And there are a ton of changes coming in on the reset for PvP. A lot of new hero talent build options are becoming more viable, and I wanted to make a tier list talking about which ones I think are likely going to be top performing come Tuesday, so you can have an idea of what class you're going to want to check out first or get an order of that, because there's quite a lot, more than just some specializations getting omega buffed. There's some kind of sleeper stuff going on as well. So let's get started because there's a lot to talk about. So the first one is Warlock, which is probably the most sleeper of all of the changes given the buffs that are coming in for Hellcaller specifically. We're seeing Black and Soul damage get increased. We're seeing Mark of Pathrum increase the critical strike damage of Wither, and we are seeing Hellcaller Zevrum's resilience being increased by 60%. So this is going to buff our defense with Dark Pact with a Hellcaller Affliction Warlock by quite a lot. And also, it's kind of incentivizing you to go after critical strike gear. Thankfully, Conquest is uncapped. So now you can actually probably restructure your Warlock to go completely for crit gear, which is likely what you will need to do for Hellcaller to take advantage of this defense buff. But this could be really monster killer right here. Like, I'm really thinking this build of Affliction could be gnarly and definitely worth checking out. And even if it's not, I still think that the Soul Harvester Affliction Warlock is likely still really strong and still really good. So for me, I think Affliction Warlock, when it comes to the tier list, I'm going to be putting it up here onto S tier. You've got the Soul Harvester, which is already really solid with the Haunt and Shadow Bolt build, and now with the Hellcaller, its defense being buffed up. The only downside is that you'll have to farm multiple sets of gear. Basically, that's the only downside, but you'll have a lot of unique play styles available to it, and I think it's going to be really competitive. Now, Arcane is receiving quite a substantial amount of buffs towards a lot of its consistent damage. I think Arcanosphere is probably the one that's standing out the most to me as far as, like, I kind of want to see what it does with a 40% damage increase, because it could be really crazy. And this is all these damage buffs are just going to make your Touch of the Magi window a lot scarier. It seems like your Arcane Surge is going to go down, but your Touch of the Magi windows are going to be a lot higher. Now, you still have the problem of having to cast most of your damage, but I'm imagining with Arcanosphere, it's going to be at least a little bit of cheeky fun. I'm kind of want to put it in the mid just because of some other buffs that are coming through for other classes that are typically like your counter. So for me, I'm still going to leave it on B tier, but if you're an Arcane kind of fanatic and it's just a spec that you really like to play, I think that it could be worth checking out, but I'm being conservative with my ranking in terms of its power. Arms Warrior is seeing buffs to its Colossus hero talent tree, which I'm very interested to see play out. We're getting some more damage reduction, which is something Warrior really needed. 2.5% baseline, and then also an additional 5% from anything that you hit with Demolish, basically. And I've been playing only Colossus Arms Warrior, so I'm really excited to try this on Tuesday. Been doing my 2400 solo shuffle challenge on all classes. I just finished it on Warlock today. I've done Hunter and Druid. Warrior, Mage, and Priest are kind of like the next main targets for me, so I'm very interested to try this. It doesn't seem like insane. I think it's kind of like you'll probably play Colossus against double melee compositions and it'll make you really durable, but you're already kind of doing well into that, so you'll probably stay Slayer into multiple ranged, and with buffs to Arcane and buffs to some Hunter specs, you're probably still going to feel kind of mid. This is like a conservative prediction list here, but I am interested to see how it plays out, but I'm kind of holding myself in reservations. Assassination Rogue, we're not really seeing anything. And I think Assassination Rogue is already really solid, so I'm going to just toss that one up under the A tier. I think it's really good, just does a lot of damage. Interested to see what they do with the Rogue talent trees, because I think the Rogue talent trees are also, hero talent trees specifically, are kind of like one-sided really, into like only rogues are only playing one build, and it seems like they're trying to expand them, especially with Warlock on this most recent one, and then Warrior, and then Mages on this one. So I do think it's likely on future tuning assessments that they're going to be looking in at, like, okay, which hero talent trees are people never playing and buffing those. So there could be a lot in the future, but for right now, I think it's a really solid, fun pick, and it's really strong. Boomkin, we didn't see any changes. There's absolutely no changes. It's a specialization where if you're faking interrupt and getting precognition, you're gonna feel really strong, and if you're not, you're just getting trained and you die. So for me, I think it's kind of mid. You can definitely still make it work, but I think that it's kind of mid, so I'm going to leave it here on B tier for now. Beastmaster Hunter, we also surprisingly saw no changes, so I think this one is likely going to be S tier. It's still just remarkable damage, really easy access damage, super easy to do well on. Definitely, like, if you're looking for an easy spec to do well on, you're going to want to go for this. Similar to Rogue, though, it seems like Hunters are pretty, like, one-sided as far as hero talent trees, although to be one-sided in a Dark Ranger is maybe not necessarily a bad thing because Dark Ranger is so cool, but the other hero talent trees don't seem to be that flexible when it comes to beast mastery, but it's definitely going to be a strong performer. Blood Death Knight I think is going to fall down. Blood Death Knight was the best Death Knight spec, and it is getting nerfed quite heavily on Death Strike by 35% damage reduction, and also but at the same time they're also reworking Deathbringer. So it might be if you're like a really big blood main, which I don't know with these Frost DK buffs and Unholy DK buffs, I feel like people are going to be trying Frost and Unholy first. But if you have to fall back on blood for some reason after these changes, this might actually be a lot of meaningful damage for blood specifically, and worth checking out. For me, I think blood is probably still going to be decently competitive. I'm gonna try and rank the tanks, but some of them I have limited experience seeing, like Brewmaster for example. You know, it was a couple of them at the start and then they kind of fell off, so I'm thinking it's probably still kind of low rank. Demonology Warlock, definitely an A tier pick, really well rounded. It's just got really good damage profile, has a lot of crowd control. It's super annoying. It's gonna be really durable. It's not getting any changes basically, but it was already just really good. Destruction Warlock, similar to Affliction, they're buffing the Hellcaller build, so I think that's likely going to be really helpful for your survivability. This is an interesting way of making them a little bit more tanky. They're definitely one of the easier Warlock specs to kill, so your Dark Pact is just going to be healing for a little bit more basically whenever you activate the shield, but that's like basically it. Although I have noticed Destro is doing pretty well in like spellcaster lobbies, so I'm interested to see if it can do well now with that tank increase as Hellcaller. For me, I'm gonna take a gamble here and say that it's A tier, but I kind of want to say it's B. I'll leave it on A just from my experience with it, you know, on Affliction and my experience on it playing Hunter. I think that it's actually kind of still somewhat sleeper, but I do kind of want to put it as B, so it might move around. Devastation Evoker is still really good. It's not receiving any changes, but it just does remarkable damage. Super easy spec to play and do well on, much like Beast Mastery Hunter. I think it's a really good one to go after. Where do I want to put this? Do I want to put it on S? I feel like I'm going to. But then it's like we got so many specs on S. Like, I think we're going to drop this on A, and we're going to drop Destro to B so that we can kind of like delineate a little bit better as far as like where specs are currently sitting. Disc Priest, easily still S tier, really good healer, just really good throughput, really fun. Been really liking playing mine even in full greens. Would definitely recommend it. It's super fun. Ellie Shaman's getting a rearrangement of its damage. It's basically taking damage out of Earth Shock and putting damage into Lava Burst. So your lethality is going down, and I think that is actually going to be bad for you. Also, the additional Lava Burst during Primordial Wave are going down. So this is all burst-oriented damage. Your sustained damage is going up slightly, but we all know that sustain is not super valuable. Being able to crack somebody for 2 to 3 million damage is a lot better for, you know, executing on a kill. So I think your lethality going down, but you are getting some Stormbringer buffs as well. So I'm interested maybe to see if like Stormbringer hard casting Ellie builds, if you can get away with that, would be any good. So it's like Hellcaller with Warlock, where it's like, I think I'm definitely going to check it out for Stormbringer, but Stormbringer having to hardcast as much as like Arcane does probably means it's not going to be great, but maybe it'll be fun. But as far as performance with Farseer, it's probably still going to feel about A tier. I think its durability kind of carries it. Its mobility against melee, its disruption against mages, and we're likely to see a lot of mages, so Ellie will still probably feel pretty decent in that regard. Enhancement Shaman, I'm throwing this up onto A tier as well. I think it's actually surprisingly well-rounded. I think that the hero talent tree builds are actually reasonably balanced as well, although, you know, most of the top level players are playing Totemic. I feel like Stormbringer can come very close to competing, especially in Shuffle. So it's got a lot of variability in that sense, and I think that it's really well-rounded. I think it's got a decent level of tankiness. I think it's actually really good, but probably been underrated for too long. But I think it's doing really well. Now with Feral Druid, I don't think any changes are happening. I just want to remind myself before I go through it here. I think that they're giving it buffs. Okay, so yeah, this is the change. So Apex Predator is going to be giving you more ferocious bite procs against multiple targets, which means against pet classes, you're probably going to have to play Apex Predator. And because of that, you know, you're going to get a lot of bite procs. But Druid of the Claw as well. Strike for the Heart increases the critical strike chance and damage of Shred, Swipe, and Mangle. It's only about 5%. I don't know if that's enough to switch you over. Also, maybe it depends. Maybe if you play a Haste Feral Druid, you know, considering I got Haste gear on my Druid as Boomkin, I might try, because your combo point builders actually do more damage based on your Haste. So Shred, Swipe, and Mangle would all of those be, but mostly just Shred. But you mostly use Brutal Slash, so it's like this just doesn't really affect you because you use Brutal Slash probably more than Shred, maybe during Incarn. But you lose so much from Wild Stalker. So I don't really think Feral's going to be going anywhere, though. I think it's probably just still going to be S. It's really tanky. Has Cyclone, really good damage. Just everything about it is really well rounded. Fire Mage is the biggest one, I think, as far as like what is going to happen, because it was going from kind of rock bottom to like you're getting all of these Frostfire buff increases, Pyroblast damage increases, Meteor increases. They're buffing the Comet Storm that's comboing with your Meteor. So like for me, I think Mage, Mage could easily be like remarkable. So it's going from like here or here to like a safe answer I want to say is A. I think that you're going to struggle because Hunters, and probably still because there's a lot of Ellies and a lot of Hunters. So I think because of where the meta is currently sitting, you might not feel that great, like an S tier spec. So I'll leave it on A tier, but I feel like there's no way it doesn't feel better with how many buffs it's getting. Frost is still really solid. It's still really good. I've really been liking playing my Frost Mage. Actually, I just played it today. I think I got to 2200. It's been a while since I sat down and tried to Q rating on it, but it was really good. It felt really strong. It's not receiving any changes, so it's likely still going to be about the same. So I'm going to leave it on to A tier for now. I think it's likely going to be tough with especially the MM Hunter changes though, and with Shamans being as good as they are. So like that's kind of like keeping mages in line from getting up to the S tier at the moment. Frost DK is a sleeper one, man. I serve Frost DK as a super sleeper spec because they're buffing. It's mostly Obliterate. I think Frost Strike is not bad. Like it's not bad. They're getting 12% here, but I swear Frost DK was already getting really big combos. I saw it in the technically PvP community tournament today. I've seen it pop up in other solo shuffle events that I've seen, and it's kind of like sleeper. I think Frost DK is actually really good. I'm gonna be smacking it up here onto A tier. Now remember, an ideal world I think is that every spec is A tier. It's got something that's super fun, feels like it's got powerful effects to it, but it's got something that counters it and kind of keeps it in check. So for Frost DK, it's likely multiple casters being able to group them together and get your combos kind of hard. Whereas if you're on S tier, it's kind of like you don't really have a significant weakness. There's nothing you see in the game where it's like I'm frustrated that that's there. But you have all the other things that A tier have where you just feel remarkable most of the time. Now, Fury Warrior, I don't think we're seeing any changes for. Fury is still just really good at the moment. But I just want to double check with this one. So, Mountain Thane. So this is, I like what they're doing here. Like I like buffing the hero talent trees that people don't really play at all. Because now it's like, maybe that could actually be fun. Maybe I should check that out. Because I've seen some comments in the video actually when I was going to the patch notes. And they're like, that ability is already hitting like 400k. So now it's going to hit like 600k. So that could be something fun to check out as Fury, is to go after a Mountain Thane build. I think it's probably going to feel A tier. I think you're better than Arms. You're just tankier. It's easier to get uptime. Although maybe with Colossus, maybe you can catch up. I think it's going to be tough though, but Fury's definitely A tier. Guardian Druid, I just don't see it. Havoc Demon Hunter is the one where I think is probably going to improve the least. Mostly because they're targeting abilities that just aren't a huge contribution to your overall damage. Immolation Aura, Demon Bite, and Fellblade. These aren't like your big abilities. I see why they wanted to increase these, because they increase the other abilities, then like they might be really bursty and scary of lethality. But I feel like these abilities aren't like, it's not a huge number for such a small portion of your damage. It's probably Demon Blades is probably like the biggest contributor. Maybe there's some Immolation Aura build that you could run. So maybe you could flip up your talents and try something along those lines. It's got such a limited sample size with Demon Hunter, but I would find it hard to believe that Demon Hunter is above B. So I'll leave it on B tier for now. Holy Priest is probably Omega God mode. Holy Priest is just getting like 10% buffs on 3 of your main heals, and then 25% I think from PvE changes on both of your spenders. So like I would find it hard to believe that Holy Priest isn't at least A. Which is far from where it was before. I think I had it much lower than that. Holy Paladin is likely still S tier. I think it's just really well-rounded. A lot of throughput, a lot of instant healing, has really good damage contributions. It's really powerful. It's still going to stay there. Marksmanship Hunter, I don't know if it'll be better than Beast Mastery. I kind of hold it in reservations as it's probably not. But I think it's going to be a monster in the Clothies. I think you're going to eat up these Warlocks. You're going to eat up these Mages. And you're going to have a really good time in those types of matchups. And then you're probably going to have a harder time with like these DKs and the Warriors, which are probably going to pop up a lot more now. Than before. Mistweaver was still really good. I think it's really well rounded. I think they did a great job with the rework. You know, in past tier lists, I said like, hey, it's kind of missing offense, kind of missing that extra little like oomph that other healers have, and it feels like they've put that back into it enough that it's actually got me even somewhat intrigued to try it, which typically I don't really, because I don't like the standing still soothing misting. But the Crackle build with lightning and the mid-ranged kicks, seemed like a lot more fun, and it's definitely a lot stronger. So I'm gonna put it onto A tier. Outlaw Rogue is really good, super sleeper. I don't think there's anything massive for Outlaw, if anything at all, for Outlaw, but I just want to double check in case. But yeah, I don't think so. It's just really good. Although it's the hardest spec, one of the hardest specs in the game to play. I want to say it's probably the hardest spec in the game to play from doing the 2400 challenge on it in Dragonflight. I think it's still very similar to what Dragonflight basically is, and it's still very complicated for that reason. So for Outlaw Rogue, just because of its complexity, I want to take it down. But if you're playing it at the skill cap, I definitely think it's S tier. So I'm gonna put it onto S tier. But I think you can get away with playing a little worse as a Feral Druid and still win. Whereas Outlaw, if you play worse, you're probably not gonna win. But if you play at the highest skill cap, then it's definitely S tier. Preservation Evoker, I don't think there's any changes for you. Seems like Pres Evoker's falling off a bit. Seems like you kind of struggle. Your like overall consistent throughput is just not there. You're like really burst based and kind of hard in solo shuffle with the positioning of your teammates not being as coordinated as it usually is. At least that's my experience playing with preservations as an Affliction Warlock. It was probably like I absolutely hated having them heal me because it just felt like the throughput wasn't there. So I definitely don't think it's S tier. But it's probably A tier. I feel like the healers are getting a lot more competitive with each other. Prot Warrior, hard to say. So I'm just going to leave these guys down here. Hard to say with these tanks because I just never see them. But the Blood DK I do see. Resto Shaman. I'm sorry, guys. You're going down here. They buffed your Lava Burst, but you don't have time to press Flame Shock or Lava Burst. Also, it is incredibly bloated on keybinds. I feel like Resto Shaman is the one that's in like most dire need of like some talent readjustments, lowering the density of keybinds. And this is somebody who's normally like anti-pruning, like I like binds. Resto Shaman is just too many. It's way too many. It's overwhelming how many keybinds Resto Shaman has. Its throughput is just not there. It's almost probably just going to feel like a third DPS. You're just going to probably chuck cooldowns out and try and do damage, but maybe it's not this bad. I'll put it on C tier. But I think it's going to be a bit of a struggle. Resto Druid, you're getting a Swiftmen buff. I don't think that's the biggest deal. I think they're also just buffing some of your overall throughput healing with Symbiotic Blooms, which could definitely be worth checking out. And still, you've got like if you can get Cyclones off, I think you'll be really good as a Resto Druid. I feel like you're probably going to be B tier compared to the rest of the healers. So I'm just kind of leaving it in the mid range, but you could maybe be popping up into A tier. Ret Paladin, I definitely think is A tier. I think this one is kind of like slept on a little bit. I think it's really good. It's got some counters that are tough to deal with, which is why it's not S tier, but the ability that you can crack somebody with a Hammer of Light for like 2 million plus is never going to be a bad thing. Lay on Hands going through dampening is also really powerful because it stacks faster in shuffle. So I think Ret Paladin is really good. Shadow Priest I still think is S tier. You do really good damage. You're tanky. You're basically still borderline unkillable in a lot of cases. So I'm actually putting Shadow Priest still in S tier. I think it might be the best caster. It's really good. You're really tanky. Maybe harder to play because you have to cast quite a bit. But I think the tankiness kind of shores up that weakness. Subtlety, hard to say how much better it's going to get. I think they're just like buffing your plague damage from your hero talent tree a little bit if I'm remembering correctly. And it's not like I don't think it's like, yeah, 45%. Unless there's some weird black powder AoE build that, people haven't talked about. Like maybe that could make it really good. I still think it's probably A tier though. I don't think Subtlety was that bad. I saw Calvish play it in the tournament. I really don't think it's that bad. But again, much like Outlaw, if you don't play it the way you need to play it, you'll never win. This is one of those specs where like you have to have it mastered really to start seeing success on it. Which is why a lot of like, the more casual rogues, we don't see them getting like a ton of success with it. But I think it's still really good. So I'm going to put it here. Survival Hunter, I don't think anything's really changing. You're just still kind of well-rounded. Although I do see Survival Hunters losing a lot when I've queued in, through multiple challenges. So I feel like Survival is not like, is it better than Arms Warrior? Because that's really the comparison, right? And then you go left to right. If everything was on A tier, then it means left to right is like best to worst, as far as like what I think. For viability, maybe this is, I don't know. That one's kind of a hard one. Survival, I'm going to leave that. Unholy DK is a big one. I'm sure a lot of people really want to know, like, what are the thoughts for Unholy, considering they're buffing Festering Wound, and they're buffing Fester Might. Now, I think this means your Apocalypse is also a bit stronger, so you can get, like, a little bit more burst out of that, which is something that you didn't have before, which is nice. I kind of want to be conservative with this one. Because DK was already, it was already pretty close. I don't know. I kind of want to be conservative with it. I think I'm going to probably leave it here on B2. I think it's like, it's really close. Like, I think it's really close. I just don't know if that is enough. Again, I think it's good to do small numbers. It's just hopefully they do more if it isn't enough in the future. And this isn't just like the final round of tuning, because I think it's a nice little bump, but I don't think it's enough to push it really over the edge. Vengeance, I don't really see. Windwalker could be crazy. Like, I swear these numbers are wild. 20% on Fists of Fury, 8 on Blackout Kick, and then 75% on the boost of your next. I'm putting this on S tier. There's no way, dude. This is like, Windwalker was already so good. There's just no way. There's no way it's not. It's super tanky, super hard to kill. There's no way. I definitely think it's up there. Augmentation Evoker, probably still here. You didn't really get any attention. And then Survival Hunter. Where do I want to put you? Are you in A or B? It's a hard one because I don't think you're as bad as Arms Warriors. So I'll put you on the bottom of A tier, or maybe like, I think maybe you might be better than Rets. No, I don't know about that. It's pretty close. Either way, I think this round of tuning is definitely pulling the specializations into the right direction. I feel like some specializations could have used like a little bit of a rearranging in power, like Boomkin, from damage to defense kind of deal, and burst to defense, kind of same thing with Destro. And some specs I think got a mega buff, like Windwalker. I just feel like that's definitely going to be through the roof as far as Tuesday. Definitely like standing out as like, maybe I should put it here, because I don't know. I think the mobility of these specs definitely edges Windwalker, but I think you're going to do disgusting damage. I think you're going to do just absolutely vile damage on Tuesday. But those are basically my thoughts, what I think, and where their power is sitting, how fun I'm thinking they are. So I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. It's got you thinking about new stuff to check out for your specialization. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video. Hit the subscribe button if you want to support me. I'm still trying to pursue that 100,000 subscriber dream. So thank you very much for your continued support, and I will try my best to continue to provide you with content that has value. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.